All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Suits and Laterals podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Rich. I'm joined, as always, by Chris Green to break down the NFL. And hey, Chris, how you doing this week, man?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Lots going on in the NFL. It's not about undefeated anymore. It's really about survival of the fittest at this point. A lot of teams are making changes at quarterback at this point in the season. One game that's probably going to yield at least one team with a new starting quarterback the next time they take the field will be the Baltimore Ravens, who lost Joe Flacco on the final drive of their 16-13 victory over the St. Louis Rams on the foot of one Justin Tucker. But Flacco tearing his ACL and MCL, not the story right at the time of the game. We all know that Jeff Fisher made the change from Nick Foles, who they just traded for in the offseason, to go with Case Keenum, the University of Houston phenom that had a cameo with the Texans, and it finds himself being the starting quarterback of the St. Louis Rams, but not for long, Chris, right?
No, not for long at all. That's for sure. He didn't even last the game. He lasted a game, but did he really last a game? Or I guess the more important question is, should he have lasted a game?
Probably not. We've seen this isn't a new movie. We've been watching this thing take place. Troy Aikman cut his career short because of too many concussions. It's not like concussions are a new thing. I think we're learning more and more about them, but it's been probably 3, 4, or 5 years since the incident in Pittsburgh where Colt McCoy comes in.
Tried to be decapitated by James Harrison.
Yeah, it takes a vicious hit from James Harrison and, Pat Shurmur and whoever else, man. It's so depressing. That was like 2 Browns regimes ago, the Pat Shurmur, Mike Holmgren era. But, you leave him on the field and you have to answer at the press conference, hey, what'd you do about his concussion? Well, we didn't do anything. And that's concussion. That's exactly what happened with the Browns. And after what happened to Colt McCoy, they said, we need to fix this. We need protocol. We need third-party, medical staff on the sidelines that aren't invested in the team so that we make the right decisions and not what's most beneficial for the team. And it was like nothing happened. They have systems in place to ding down to the field now. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Chris.
Yep, I am.
They have these systems to go get these guys out of the game when the coaches are too busy with football, when the announcers are too busy officiating football. You have these third-party people. What are they doing? It's the quarterback, right?
Well, okay, so this is got to be the most disturbing thing I've seen in a while. Number one, as you just said, you have an independent person sitting up there who's supposed to be watching for this. There is no reason this shouldn't have been caught. Number two, he spoke to the trainer. The trainer is supposed to stop this. Didn't happen. Number three, the guy who picked him up off the field and watched him fall back down on the field should have done something. That's not even getting to the coaches. There were so many failures on this, it's not even funny.
Would you say that the NFL has failed its players, more specifically their former players, with all the benefits, all the things that we're learning? Shouldn't these guys, and who knows, really, I'm not starting a conversation about where the money comes from, whether it comes out of the current players' pockets or whether the owners have to pony up part of the bill or whatever. But these guys are blowing their heads off. These guys are shooting themselves in the chest so that people could study their brains to reveal that the CTE and everything else is very real thing.
Absolutely. It's a very real thing. It's a very scary thing. There's the history of the players, whether it's Junior Seau, Mike Webster, whoever. There's just been so many instances of these events happening, and the league has, at least put it out there that they're trying to take care of this issue. But I don't know what the hell happened yesterday, because it sure doesn't look like they're doing anything about it.
And to think that this happens with a quarterback, and we could see it because it is the quarterback, and he is a story, even more of a story than the standard garden variety starting quarterback would be, because he just took the job from Nick Foles. So, and that's the last thing you want to have to do as a head coach is bench a guy and then have to put him back in right away because he becomes your backup quarterback, right?
Yeah, exactly. But all I got to say is somebody better be getting fired over this, if not multiple people.
I don't know, man. I know it's Hollywood versus reality, but the Asian doctor from Jurassic Park, which came out like 20 years ago, played by an actor named B.D. Wong, didn't lose his job for everything that took place in the first Jurassic Park, apparently, because he was working at the new revitalized park in Jurassic World that came out in I believe it was this year in 2015. So. Yeah. 22 years later, and this guy still hasn't lost his job. And I just think that there are people like that. Like Lane Kiffin is the coach, is the coaching world example of the guy that doesn't lose his job despite not doing anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're having this conference call with all the trainers, but I'm sorry, somebody's got to take responsibility for this. This is just too blatant to not get somebody's pound of flesh.
I'm saddened by it, and all it does is create outrage. These players can't win these the veterans can't win the lawsuits, and once it's already happened, you just throw your arms up in the air and say, we'll try not to let it happen again. But there really are no consequences for screwing up these situations. Let's talk about the real life consequences that a person like Case Keenum might face, because from getting his bell. We used to call it getting his bell rung, and we used to say that the players were tough for playing through that. But it's not so much the getting your bell rung; it's just getting rung over and over again. And it was funny. You know what I finally did before we started recording tonight was I watched the trailer for the movie Concussion, where Will Smith is a doctor talking about and it's art imitating life. That you can't convince the NFL because the real answer, at the end of the day, the real answer is how do you prevent concussions in the NFL?
You can't.
You cease to play football. Shutting down the sport is going to be the alternative to to limiting the number of concussions suffered by athletes.
Yeah, and that'll never happen. I mean, it's an unfortunate reality of the situation. I mean, they can try to protect the players as much as they can. They can try to protect the players from themselves, which, really is what this whole independent person is supposed to be, is to protect the players from himself, because obviously there's been too many instances in history that, the players aren't going to come out unless they're forced to come out. And I'll give the NFL credit. They've done a much better job with it, but the ball got dropped big time on this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Should Fisher face any punishment? Should anybody with the Rams specifically, be subject to scrutiny? I guess I'm trying to improve the process, but shouldn't there be some kind of punitive action other than, we're going to get the trainers on a conference call to make sure that they understand what our procedures are?
Well, yeah, somebody on the Rams, in all honesty, I hate to say it, but I'd have to go after that trainer who talked to the guy. Why did he not do something about this? They had the break, a little bit of a break there. I believe it was a penalty, and yet he sits there, he talks to the quarterback, he's right back in there. I don't know how much more blatant you can be. Jeff Fisher saying afterward in his press conference, I don't know anything about it. Doesn't address it at all. Talking about, he gets a full week of practice this week like nothing happened. He may not have been looking at the play or whatever, but still somebody, I guess I'd say I have to go after the trainer because he was there. He could have done something about this.
Is your concern on this issue, Chris, more about just negligence on the injury or the nature of the injury? Do you have a problem with Andrew Luck playing 3 games with broken ribs, among another other myriad of injuries, or is it specifically the brain that concerns you? Just not as anybody in particular, not as somebody that does this podcast, but just as a human being. Is your concern more for the brain, or would you say that you exercise dissatisfaction in playing through any and all of these injuries?
I would say the brain is the biggest one. Is my concern. I mean, everybody has their own pain tolerance and all that. So I mean, they're going to play through injuries. I mean, we've all. I'm sure you have. I know I have. I've played through injuries at various times. I mean, nothing as bad as broken ribs or that, but it's just the brain injury. There's just so many unknowns still, and the effects of that are much long term. I mean, yes, you can play with knees and stuff like that and cause damage down the road, but I don't know. The head thing I think is really the biggest part that concerns me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what's telling is, I played football for a while. I played football from I want to say second or third grade, right on through high school. I wasn't good enough to play at the collegiate level by any stretch of the imagination. But, it's something that my father told me. And my father was married to the game of football his entire life as well. He coached it, even when I was too young to play, is that he wouldn't have let me play football. Knowing what he knows now about brain injuries, he would not have let me go out there and, take the, quite frankly, the ass kicking that I took playing quarterback and just getting hit a lot because I didn't get rid of the ball, in good time. And even when I did, it's a dangerous position to play in. And it's unfortunate that, we know all these things that we didn't know, but that's just history. I mean, you could say the same thing about, cigarette smokers that grew up in the 1950s versus the ones that grew up in the 2000s that knew it was really, really bad for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just so much more out there now, data out there. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, we've got players retiring early so they don't have to go through this because of the concussions and it's the head. Here's something else you got to think about too, is you can mess up your knee and play through it and you have a bad knee. Your brain controls everything in your body. It's not just one body function that could be slowed down. It could be death that occurs from this. I mean, we've seen the examples already, whether it's self-inflicted or not.
Yeah. Well, let's get away from the morbid. And, maybe let's see what can we find that's that's a good segue across the morbid trail. Well, okay, the Browns are on a bye week, but
they didn't play, so there's no morbidity there.
Right. Let's talk about another quarterback to kind of take it over the show. And it'll be Brock Osweiler going forward for the Denver Broncos, who do have a Hall of Fame quarterback on their payroll. He made his debut against the Chicago Bears, plays pretty well. The Broncos come away with a 17-15 victory on the road against a coaching staff that was very familiar with them. Broncos, Bears, Brock Osweiler. What do you got, Chris?
Well, I watched the whole game, so I got to see what Osweiler was able to do. I mean, he didn't do anything too amazing. I mean, obviously, it's hard to be in the shadow of Peyton Manning, but compared to how Peyton Manning's looked this year, he looked like a world beater. I mean, Peyton Manning's been horrible all season. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's true. I mean, Osweiler went out there. He did what he had to do to help them win the game. I mean, the defense played a big part, and it was a good, solid game. I wouldn't say, like I said, nothing spectacular, but he did just what he needed to do to get the W.
I mean, if you're Gary Kubiak and you got a decision to make, you made the decision you're going to go with Brock this week. Let Manning sit some more. But as you approach the playoffs, do you feel obligated to get 18 back on the field, or do you want to just see if this, if Osweiler can continue to be the hot hand?
Well, I think at this point, number one priority has got to be to get Peyton as healthy as possible. I mean, they're now 8-2, so there's really no reason for Manning to play anytime soon. I'd let him sit out a month if necessary. You should, unless Osweiler starts sticking up the joint, as long as they're still getting W's, let him play. Get Manning as healthy as you can. If Osweiler plays great, you know what? Ride your healthy hand. Just think about what the Patriots did however many years ago it was when Tom Brady took over for Drew Bledsoe. Thank you. So, I mean, you go with what gets you there. But if Osweiler isn't doing that great, then as soon as Peyton's healthy, you throw him back out there and see what he can do.
Well, okay. We mentioned the Cleveland Browns were on a bye week, and what got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to Jameis Winston being their starting quarterback would have been the play of Josh McCown and a lot of other things with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a year ago. But they finally find themselves looking at the NFC playoff picture with Jameis Winston throwing 5 touchdown passes against the Philadelphia Eagles. The young rookie, a little bit better success coming into the league than Mariota did going to the Titans, and Marcus Mariota's missed some time. But what do you think of Jameis Winston coming on the scene with 5 touchdown passes, man?
Well, he's starting to get it, I think, is what it amounts to. I mean, he was a tremendous quarterback in college. So, I mean, there was high expectations for him coming in, but he's starting to figure it out now. I mean, I certainly didn't expect Tampa to be 5-5 at this point in the season. And I mean, they're not going to get the division at this point, but everybody else is so bad right now in the NFC. If they get to stay around 500, there's a possibility they could come out with a wild card at this point, as scary as that is.
Absolutely. Quarterback play, and I'm gonna tread lightly here, but going from one black quarterback to another, and I think that there's a conversation to be had. We've talked about Andrew Luck and Cam Newton, why Cam Newton doesn't get the love, and I've fully been in Cam's corner. Big win over the Redskins, 44-16. Panthers go to 10-0. Cam is their offense. I mean, is there a more clear-cut MVP candidate to past the halfway point in the season than one Cam Newton?
I mean, the Patriots fans would probably argue Tom Brady, but beyond that, I would say not. I mean, Andy Dalton's come back to earth, and I mean, we all kind of expected that as well. But I definitely think he's at the top of the discussion right now. I mean, really, I said it before. I didn't expect them to continue to be undefeated. They're 10-0 now. I mean, there's one of 2 teams that's undefeated at more than halfway through the season. I don't think anybody predicted that.
Right. Moving on, we've got that Bengals Cardinals showdown in the desert. Not so much a battle of the quarterbacks, just a battle of the head coaches, a battle of the complete teams, and a battle of 2 teams having really good seasons this year. Did you happen to catch the end of the game, the shenanigans that went down with Arizona trying to clock the ball and Cincinnati trying to throw off the snap count?
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I mean, that went from being a tough field goal attempt to a chip shot. I mean, it was, I think, a yard less than an extra point is what it turned out to be. So, I mean, it's a whole gamesmanship thing. The old saying is, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And plenty of people have done that over the years. But, that referee moves up right there at the end of the game for these kind of things. And he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And, hey, they paid the price.
And that's, I don't know, gamesmanship or cheating. You're trying to throw off the snap count. I'll tell you what, I played quarterback back in the day. That would really frustrate with me to hear a defensive lineman trying to mimic my cadence.
Mm-hmm. Sure, but like I said, they got caught. So, I mean, it's their loss. And I mean, Marvin Lewis is whining about it at the end. But, hey, you know what? You reap what you sow.
Does that Bengals team look like they've been a little exposed in their losses? Granted they had the short week, and granted Houston came in pretty fired up for Monday Night Football, but 10-6 loss to the Houston Texans, followed up by a tough road trip to Arizona, last second field goal between two pretty good teams, but Cincinnati can't feel as good as they did, entering play on Monday Night Football a week ago.
Sure. I mean, let's be honest. Last Monday night, the weather wasn't great. And, when we have rain and stuff like that, anything can happen in those kind of games. And it's the NFL. Every team has an upset every now and then. So I would say that was their upset. But this week, I wouldn't call an upset. I mean, Arizona, we both know Arizona is a very good team. And it was a really good game overall last night. So I don't think they have anything to shake their heads about after last night other than, getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar. But they've impressed me this season. They just got to keep it up. I mean, I wasn't expecting Andy Dalton to drive them down there at the end to, put that game to a tie. So it's a heck of a game.
I think some of the role players are letting Dalton down, and I think the defense is catching an extra penalty. They're getting caught with their, it's just like you said, they're caught with their hand in their cookie jar. I'm going to tell you, I think that they're going to be on the outside looking in. I think they're going to have to play that first week of the playoffs, so they're not going to get to play like a weak NFC South champion. They're going to end up playing a pretty tough wild card team. I'm telling you, I think that the curse continues for the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think they are victorious in the postseason for the however many times in the last 25 years that the Bengals have tried to win an opening round playoff game. I don't think Andy Dalton gets it done, and I don't think it matters. I think the bar's pretty low there for Mike Brown in Cincinnati.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times have we discussed saying, how does Marvin Lewis keep his job when he can't win a playoff game? But, Mike Brown seems to be fairly content with that at this point. And like I said, they're not going to shut people up until they prove they can win a playoff game. So we'll see what happens come January.
I'm going to tell you, I think that the NFC South actually, finishes with two teams over 500. I don't think we have a 7-9 division champion or anything like that. But hey, one other game, real big game, quietly at the top of the NFC North. The Minnesota Vikings found themselves entering play at home against Green Bay, who was on a 2-game skid going into play there at TCF Stadium in Minneapolis. Are the Packers back, and were the Vikings more of a fluke than a first-place team?
You know what? The Vikings, I mean, they still have their holes on there, so I'm not really surprised. I mean, I've always said, they'll go as far as Aaron Rodgers takes them. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a great game for Aaron Rodgers, but it was a solid game. They've put up 30 points, which is what they need to do. I've always said my biggest concern with them has been their defense, and they were able to hold the Vikings down this week, and that's the important thing. I mean, at the end of the day, they will go as far as their offense takes them. I mean, Adrian Peterson, he's had a pretty solid season. I wouldn't say spectacular, but considering the guy wasn't playing at all last year, up until this game, he had been averaging, I believe, close to 100 yards a game. And, the Packers really committed to shutting him down, and he only had 45 yards rushing.
Hey, Chris, you going anywhere this Thanksgiving? Are you going to be at home, or are you going over to a relative's house for dinner? Are you traveling anywhere? What's going on with you, man?
I'm actually heading down south to spend a couple of days at Disneyland.
Hey, that's the way to do Turkey Day, man. That's the way to do any cold month holiday.
Yep.
It's not as bad for us in California and Arizona as it is for some of the people out there, but it's always good to take a little trip. So you won't be taking in Eagles Lions on Thursday?
Probably not. I may try to catch the Thursday night game though.
Okay, so Thursday Night Football, we have Bears-Packers. Bears are pretty good 4-16. The Packers talked about a little bit. I think, people are foolish. It's got to be foolish to put the Cowboys in the playoff race, right? They're a 3-7 team. They're hosting a 10-0 team, and they are favored at home by like 2.5 points. That's just the craziest thing you've ever heard when you look at numbers.
Yeah, that's some optimistic people there. That's for sure. I mean, I don't care if Tony Romo's back or not. I just don't think they're a good enough team to upend Carolina.
All right, so Broncos Patriots Sunday night could be Osweiler v. Brady instead of Manning v. Brady for probably the final time, even though Manning has said that he wants to play again in 2016. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any takers on that. And then if you're ESPN marketing and you have this game to promote, you have this Monday Night Football game between the 3-7 Baltimore Ravens and the 2-8 Cleveland Browns. I mean, what angle do you even approach that at?
The revenge factor.
What for 21 years since the team took off?
Why not? They always seem to come with some angle with history. Whether it's the Browns haven't won in however many years, or they'll still say John Harbaugh's record against the Browns is was he lost one time now or two times?
Chris, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm tired of playing primetime games against division rivals. Play those games on Sunday afternoons. Give us something special. Give us an interconference game, or give us a game between the Browns and someone they don't play on a regular basis. Seeing the Browns play the Bengals in Cincinnati on Thursday night at the beginning
for the second straight year,
in the beginning of November every year, is just old and tired. Seeing the Browns play the Ravens and Steelers on Monday Night Football, we don't need it. It ends up being more of a promotion for the opponent than a showcase of the game of football. So I just get tired of it. So I never get tired of doing these podcasts. You can find us at suitsolaterals.com or on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically anywhere with an RSS feed that gives you your podcast. You're going to be able to find us, coming to you from the Four Lights FM podcast network. Hey, Chris, do you have any parting shots on the NFL this week?
Just enjoy the game tonight. Bills Patriots should be a good one. You won't hear this till after the game's over. So I predict the Patriots will still be undefeated after this week, and enjoy the 3 games on Thursday, whether it's with your family or friends, and just have a good Thanksgiving, everybody. And Jeff, you have a good Thanksgiving as well.
I hope I do, and the sentiment goes right back to you. I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be the idiot here. I'm going to take Rex Ryan and the Bills in Monday Night Football, and the results will reveal themselves by the time we publish. Hey, I do want to mention the Seattle Seahawks will be hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers for the first time since Super Bowl 40 when they feel that they were wronged. So, you get a chance to be in front of the TV at 1:25 or at 4:25 Eastern time. For the Steelers at Seahawks. The 12s are going to be pretty loud and rowdy, and you wonder if they'll have anything to say to the Pittsburgh Steelers, though none of the cast is really still there other than maybe Mike Tomlin.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, yeah, that guy too. Hey, that's going to do it for Susan Laterals. For Chris Green, I'm Jeff Rich. Subscribe, download, listen, enjoy the games. We'll catch you next week.